When you're doing a usability engineering study, you have to identify what the use errors are. In this case, our usability study is concentrated on Christmas trees and what could possibly go wrong with the decorating of the Christmas tree and the setting it up. And we're specifically looking at use errors. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with the Christmas tree, but something you might do at home that might cause problems later on.
Okay, so if we're doing a specific, almost like a specific type of risk analysis. So what is the criteria we're using to rank these?
So if we were doing a medical device usability study, we would be ranking them typically from 1 to 5. 1 would be the lowest risk, so that would be at the top, and 5 would be the highest risk at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And so a 1 would be something no risk at all of somebody getting hurt or harmed in any way. 2 would be maybe there's a small risk of some harm, but nothing that would require medical treatment. So maybe you got it scratched by the needles on the Christmas tree or something. The third one, the B, that would be there's enough of an injury that we might need medical attention. So a bandage, maybe stitches, maybe ice, maybe medication, but our lives are not in danger, but we are going to need some kind of medical attention, either from somebody trained at home on first aid, or maybe even have to take a little trip over to the ER and join all the other people that were putting up their Christmas tree. And C4, that would be a permanent injury of some kind. So hopefully we wouldn't have these occur, but it would be something that would be some sort of permanent injury to the person. Paralysis would be an example of that. We hope these don't happen, but sometimes they do. And like you could have crushing injuries where they're just not able to completely repair you and you don't heal 100%. That happens with broken bones a lot. And then the last one, the D, that would be a score of 5 for the most severe, and fittingly, D is also death. So if there's the potential for death, you go with the bottom. And in general, they tell you to pick the worst case. But there might be multiple, like one thing could happen and it could result in a minor injury, or could result in a major injury. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay. If we were looking at this like a use-related risk analysis, where would we draw the line for a critical task?
Right between A and B. If it requires medical attention, it's a 3 or a B, C, D. Those are going to be the ones that you have to report to the FDA, and those are the most serious. Those are also the critical tasks. Critical tasks would be something that it will actually result in harm. Whereas the 1s and 2s, those are not something that would require reporting, and they wouldn't be considered a critical task.
Okay. I think I understand that. If we were looking at it like a traditional use-related risk analysis, we would start with the use error, which brings us very clearly to inaction itself. But what we're looking at here is the hazard presentation. So
Correct.
we're starting in the middle of the URRA columns.
Yep.
Now,
we're going to identify all the hazards.
Yep. If you look at the FDA's 2016 usability guidance, they have a bulleted list of traditional hazards. And off the top of my head, I don't know. You probably do, but I would be willing to put money on it that if you look into 14971, there's probably also a list of hazards in there somewhere.
As it just so happens, that would be table C1.
Of course you know, just off the top of your heads. That's why
I sleep with
I
it
ask
on my
you these
pillow.
questions.
That's the best place for it.
Now, what wouldn't surprise me is if it was the actual same list.
Okay. So one of the things that we have done here to make this go smoothly is we have created a list of hazards already. And Matthew used to be a firefighter, and he did training in his fire department, so he knows a lot of what can happen with a Christmas tree at the holidays firsthand and secondhand. Um, having a home and having a Christmas tree and having bad things happen, we all know firsthand. But he's also seen what other people have done in spectacular color involving 911 calls. So we might learn something about how to avoid them.
Well, I gotta say, my first actual structure fire when I was a firefighter was because it was around Christmas time. Or right around right now, a cat had knocked over a standing candle, and when it tipped over, all of the liquid wax spilled out, and it caught on fire. And that was the very first structure fire that I had to respond to. But it was because a cat had knocked over an unattended candle that was on a countertop.
We have a guest saying hi. Hi, Alicia.
Hi, Alicia. All right, so I could get distracted. We were looking at hazards. We have our ranking criteria.
Yes.
We know what will make it a critical task. And we are looking at this from the point of view of our medical device Christmas tree we are setting up, right?
Absolutely. And each one of us is going to take turns placing the presents where we think it belongs on the chart, and the other person will give their opinion on it too. And you're welcome to put your own opinions down below. So the first one, I think of this first one, the ornaments, I think of the movie Home Alone. It's not going to cause a fire. It's not going to cause a permanent injury, but I know it hurt, and he probably needed stitches after he got the glass out of his feet. So I'm going to put it at a B. It could be in an A where it just caused pain, but he didn't need stitches. But I'm going to say they were broken glass, really thin, caused enough stitches in the bottom, or enough of a laceration in the bottom of his feet. He needed stitches. I'm going to go worst case. So I'm going to say it's a B or a 1 or a 3, making it a critical task.
All right, so let's see. That gives me, looks like I'm stuck with garland.
Yep. And this, I have garland too, but yours is entangling in the garland.
Okay. I think this would probably be a pretty good example of something that would be an S or an A. So one of the things I did in the fire service was as an OSHA safety consultant. So slips, trips, falls, pinch points, entanglements. In order for injuries to occur from entanglements, there has to be an additional series of actions that happens. If I get tangled in garland, it doesn't hurt me unless something else also happens.
We're going to say this, everybody laughs at you because you're stuck in the garland, but there's no real injury, just emotional trauma.
Correct. Unless something else were to, like, if it caused me to fall or if it caused me to do something else, there would have to be an additional series of actions or something that would cause an entanglement to cause harm.
Okay. The next one, my garland, we're going to have somebody choke on this. It's a choking hazard. I'm not sure who other than the cat would choose to choke on the garland, but we're going to assume it's not so much garland we need to do the Heimlich. We're going to say there's no permanent injury. There's no medical treatment that's required here. But, I mean, choking, you could say, yeah, we got to do the Heimlich. Maybe it's a B. What do you think, A or B?
I mean, so just going back to my criminal justice classes, if we're talking choking, this means we have an internal blockage of the airway. And if we're talking about strangulation, we have an external compression of that same area.
I would say it'd be more likely they strangle themselves with it.
I mean, if we're worst case scenario every time, I think that goes to a D. But if we're looking at it, if this were a URRA, we would be starting with what is the use error that's making the strangulation or choking happen?
Maybe wrapping your brother or sister in it. Not that I've ever done that.
Ever tied anyone up with Christmas?
There's no possible reason why my sister only calls once a year.
All right, not touching that one. Next.
Okay, we'll put that in the middle.
We've got some more
next
comments.
one here. It looks like we have a faulty plug of some kind. Maybe somebody decided I don't have a 3-prong outlet, so I'll make one that fits in a 2-prong.
Okay, perfect. So we were just talking about the use error. So there's a lot of different definitions. The FDA has a definition. The IEC ISO standard has a different definition. Just about every standard comes up with their own definition for what a use error is. One of the things we have to look at for the FDA is that it is explicitly tied to either an action or a lack of an action. And that occurs within what's called the PCA cycle, which stands for perception, cognition, and action. So as people are doing things, normally we would look at this as a medical device, but with our medical device Christmas tree we're setting up, they need to see information, they need to think about that and absorb it, and then they're either going to do something or not do something based on that. And the device use is just a constant circle of going through that cycle over and over again. So if we're going to get hurt from this, it's because somebody has modified the plug to fit into an inappropriate outlet. Yep. And one of the other hiccups we get to look at with use errors is there's something that's called abnormal use, which if the user does something completely unintended with the device, that would represent, I think the wording is would be reckless use or intentional sabotage. It's abnormal use and outside of reasonable means of risk mitigation. So if we're messing with the ground wire or the ground plug, we're looking at potentials for electrical fires or shock hazards. And as a worst case scenario, I think those also go kind of straight to that D category.
Okay. But we're saying it's not just a use area, it's an abnormal use area.
Yes. Yes. So we provided the
we
safety
intentionally did something
already.
We're not supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. So if you're gonna break off the ground plug so that it fits into your extension cord, that's abnormal use. Or I would argue that it was abnormal use.
I put a couple other comments up below, other suggestions about why we think the garland might be strangling small children. So for everybody's enjoyment.
entirely possible. Sometimes small children do illogical things.
The next thing we have here is very much along the lines of falling and tripping. We have a present. You have all kinds of presents around the tree causing tripping hazards. Too many for the small little space. So I'm going to put that in an S. Do you have any comments?
So they're going to trip over it. How does the FDA approach this? Because there are instances where one of the things when I was a firefighter, I was also an EMT, and we came across standing height injuries that would have hit the critical task level. What does the FDA require when looking at something like a tripping hazard like this? Because most people will fall and not sustain a critical injury, but the potential for that does exist.
Yeah. I think they would probably bump it up from no harm to this kind of harm, but I don't see them going much beyond that. Mm-hmm. Just because we're on a level surface, we're not falling down a flight of stairs here. Hopefully you have a soft landing, maybe on some other presents. Mm-hmm. So maybe we would have some presents that wouldn't fare so well. and they might need to be rewrapped or repaired. But I think we get the person might avoid the ER tonight.
Okay. We got a couple more comments. I see that Alicia is commenting, don't try to MacGyver the outlet to try and make it work. Yes. And don't overload your surge protectors, and don't plug in something that's going to pull more electricity than the cord is rated for.
Somebody says audio is not working. I see both of our audios working. And the other guests are commenting. So I'm not sure why that person is, but you will see it on the recording. So I apologize that you're not getting audio, but you will see it on the recording. And if you go to our website where we stream StreamYard on medicaldeviceacademy.com, you should be able to see it there and might hear the sound. But it could be also your audio is somehow turned off. I know I have way too many settings on my computer.
That's okay. We have another great comment on YouTube. All I could think of is last week. I've got 3 children from 5 to 10, and we just watched the original 1984 Gremlins movie.
Yes.
And all I can think of is I wish I'd thought of this when you were building the list, but this is correct. We should keep Santa away from the chimney until there are design updates, which is perfect because as we're building our a use-related risk analysis, this ultimately traces to the validation of the risk mitigations that we're putting in, and the FDA wants us to use a tiered approach. They would prefer we designed these risks away than if we just put a warning in the IFU. So going straight to design is a correct move to make, and we should keep Santa Claus away. That is correct.
And not feed any animals after midnight.
Yeah, don't get them wet. Don't feed them after midnight. So let's see.
You're next. You have some Zyrtec here. It seems like somebody might be allergic to Christmas trees.
Yes. So I know that with medical devices, we look at biocompatibility, and allergenicity testing is sometimes some of the things
very high as being deaf. But is it different when we're talking about something that you're inhaling, like you're inhaling pine needle and pine scent? That's not the same as putting it inside the body. So when we do biocompatibility testing, we have different types of exposure. You have implantation, we have external communication, we have surface contact. This is going to be more like the surface contact because you have the person has nose hairs that are supposed to filter out things. They're not supposed to be eating the Christmas tree. That would be an extreme case of abnormal use. I think we're just talking about I'm allergic to pine. It makes me sneeze and stuffed up nose here. So I think Zyrtec will be enough. I don't think we need to put it in the death category. But, you know, if it really gets bad, we might have to go and get some medicine. Maybe. That's as high as I would go.
So if I take over-the-counter allergy medicine because I have environmental allergies to the medical device, is that enough to make it a critical task? Because if this was like a peanut allergy, we could shoot straight to D with no problem.
I think I would, because you'd have to put a warning on your label saying, disclosing the allergy or potential allergy. And then people are asked to do, we do the questions at the end, looking at for knowledge-based questions to see if they understand the warning. So we would consider all those knowledge-based questions critical tasks. So, we have somebody that's actually an expert in Christmas tree allergies saying, do not rub your eyes or after you touch the live tree, or you will swell up. But once that would bump it up from definitely going from we've got it from surface contact to now we are dealing with mucosal contact, which increases the the pain and suffering quite substantially. So I think we got to keep it at least in that B category. But I think Benadryl will do the trick if the Zyrtec doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So what's your next present? Is that a cat in the picture? It's little. I can't see.
This one here is a tree topper, and this is sharp and pointy and up high. And I thought it would be great when somebody knocks into the tree slightly because they're playing around the tree, and they knock it, lands on my head, and spears me in the head with sharp glass tree topper pointy thing. So I'm figuring that this might be some lacerations.
Possible. If we're going back to the traditional hazard list, that would be kinetic energy hazards fall under mechanical hazards.
Yep.
So the physical hazard would be if it were sharp or pointy.
Yep.
If it can hurt you that way. But if it's going to fall on you or it's going to tip over and crush you, now that's a separate hazard category to look at.
Right here. We have a little kitty cat that was playing around the Christmas tree and has no idea how that happened. So the Christmas tree is falling down, and the cat's like, "It almost killed me."
Perfect. So yeah, that would the act of falling would push it away from a physical hazard. If it were sharp and could cut you or stab you, that would be different. But the impact from the falling would be a mechanical hazard, so kinetic or potential energy. Same thing if you're dealing with like springs, something that would be spring loaded. If that were to release and injure somebody, it would also be considered a mechanical hazard. But
now, are we going to say that you're as fragile as a kitty, and we're going to put you down in the death category if the tree lands on you? Or can we back off a little bit on that and say maybe you only permanent injury, but you won't die?
So this is a medical Christmas tree. If the Rockefeller tree falls on you.
Somebody told me a story about somebody falling off a roof, and somebody said you will live.
That was when I was a kid. If it wasn't an instantaneously fatal injury, you would have been informed as a child, you'll live. It was a long way from your heart. So I think a standard Christmas tree, whether real or artificial, probably isn't going to cause a large amount of mechanical harm.
Yep.
But if the Rockefeller tree falls on you, I envision that
then we've got death of a few hundred people.
So now that we're in these two different situations, what would the FDA prefer to see?
I think the FDA would say either way it's a critical task, and they would want adequate protective measures in place. Yep. And I think you get some installation issues there if it's fallen over. Potentially, maybe that the cut on the bottom of the tree wasn't quite right. Which brings up another point. Alicia's commented here that fake trees can be a good preventive action against allergies. So if you are doing a tier ranking chart in trying to score your hazards of use errors in an actual usability study, and you have your whole team together, and somebody comes up with things to prevent, so it's either a protective measure like an alarm, or it's an actual design change, those are great things to get out of the team. But the stage we're at is at identifying hazards. So you need a parking lot to take those comments and say, excellent comment, we'll write that down, but that isn't the stage we're at now. That's something we got to remember when we get to the part where we eliminate the problems. So Elise is absolutely correct, but we cover that in a later lesson where we solve all the problems.
So if this were a use-related risk analysis, we would be looking at a fake Christmas tree would be a risk mitigation for the allergies. And we would have to trace that out to the validation of the risk mitigation. Would this be something that the FDA would accept our allergenicity report from the materials used in the synthetic tree, or would we have to do something else to validate that risk mitigation?
We would have to measure it to verify that the risk control of material selection is adequate. We wouldn't have to intentionally expose people to it to see if they die. And Alicia commented here that it reminds her of seeing on emergency shows where the person has a piece of tree sticking through them in their abdomen. So that definitely puts the category of C in there. They lived, but they might have had some abdominal surgery. So there definitely might be some permanent injury there caused by the tree through your stomach.
Yeah, I suppose, I guess there's really no arguing about it. If your Christmas tree tips over, that's making it a critical task hazard.
Yep. Now, the next one we have here is we have animals chewing on the wires. I think that's where we're at.
So if
we somehow got out of order a little bit here, but anyway, we have animals chewing on. So poor little Rip here has chewed on some wires around the Christmas tree, and hopefully we don't have human beings chewing on the wires, which would cause all kinds of interesting problems. But little Rip, I think Rip's going to die because he chewed on the wires.
Okay,
if it were other people, maybe we just put them here, but I think Rip's in trouble.
So this is we're exposing a live wire, and it's a shock hazard.
Yep. And you're chewing it, so not good for you.
Okay. Chewing on a live wire, I got a shock hazard's got to go pretty straight to D, don't they?
Yeah. This one here, we have melted insulation. What happens there, Mr. Fireman?
Okay, so one of the things that could happen this time of year is overloading the capacity for the wires that you're using. And the fastest way I've ever seen this demonstrated in real life was actually with jumping a car. So a car that had a dead battery, you hook it up to another vehicle with a set of jumper cables. If those jumper cables are not rated correctly to support the electricity going back and forth between the batteries, they will heat up and they will overheat and melt that plastic sheathing, which will then, of course, expose the live wires. And anytime live wires are exposed, you have the potential for a shock hazard. If you overload it enough, it can be hot enough to combust. So theoretically, too much electricity going through too thin of a wire that can't support it could heat up enough to cause a fire, could melt your protective sheathing, exposing live wires, which would be a shock hazard.
Okay.
I have a hard time anytime we get to shock and fire just not going straight to D. I know realistically probably isn't going to happen, but should that occur,
I'm okay with just
injuries go straight to catastrophic.
Melted wires. Let's go on to the next one. We now have a fire extinguisher here, and in this situation, we're going to say that somebody forgot to see if the fire extinguisher is charged. So that was a use error, not directly related to the tree, but for anything else that might catch on fire in your home, you forgot to charge your fire extinguisher, or check that it is charged after you use it to save yourself at Thanksgiving. Now it's Christmas, and you just delayed the inevitable of death.
Yep, I can't argue with that.
Oh, now we have an interesting one. We have strobe effects. We have flashing lights that, as you have learned by watching Disney, it may cause seizures.
Yes. So, yikes, something that causes a seizure. In most cases, should be non-fatal. However, seizure activity has led to fatal events before. So looking at a use-related risk analysis, one of the things we aren't allowed to take into consideration is the probability of occurrence. So when we're tracing this out, we've got to assume the absolute worst case scenario happens every single time, regardless.
Yep. So
100%
everybody that walks
occurrence.
by my Christmas tree has seizures instantly.
I think that's going straight to C or D.
Okay, we're going to give it a C. I know most people survive their seizures, but they might have some lasting effects.
Yep.
Okay, next thing we have. Oh, that looks like delightful little daisy chain of surge protectors and outlets all gang together as we're not supposed to do. I think that is going to cause fire as well. I could be wrong, but I think we're looking at what did we say for the overloading the daisy chain there? We could have fire, we could have burning, we could have shock. All kinds of things could happen. But I think we're looking at death.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think it would be a D2. Alicia says this feels like a game of devil's advocate, and it kind of is.
Well, let's make it Final Destination. You have the circuit breaker go. You think you dodged it because the circuit breaker went, and then you went downstairs and stepped in the pool of water as you flicked it back, and you died anyway.
So this is also something we see with the use-related risk analysis, is that there's not always a tremendous amount of things kind of in the middle. It either gravitates towards one end or the other. Either everything kills everybody, or it really can't hurt you at all. I'm seeing candles on the next one.
Yes, and we already know how that ends up. House fire.
Yeah, so again, straight to C or D. Candles and Christmas trees, they don't mix. I know it's a traditional decoration, but especially if you're not watering your tree appropriately, they dry out. The pitch is highly flammable. Okay. It's a dangerous situation.
Okay, we'll burn the house down. Oh, this one's daisy chain has gone all the way. We see what happens. There we go. And what do we have here? We have a tripping hazard. We have a rug here with the cord going under it, and the cord could short, but it could just also be a tripping hazard. So why don't we say that one's a tripping hazard?
So back to OSHA again. We have slips, trips, and falls. If the FDA will accept that standing height injuries are not likely to cause permanent, irreversible harm or death, I think we've got another S or A level hazard. And actually, the picture here utilizes a cover over the cord anyway, which would be the way to handle it so that the trip hazard
is minimized,
covered and not exposed. So this is a mitigated hazard in the image.
So maybe we even put it here.
We'd have to validate the risk mitigation, but there is a mitigation in place. So either S or A.
Got to have a little bit spread out here. This one's the pitch from the tree. I'm going to put this back down here where we put the other things that light the house on fire.
That's right. Water your trees if you have a real tree. Water them sufficiently. They dry out. And the worst part is when they dry out, they make a huge mess too. You have pine needles everywhere.
Needles everywhere. Another case for the fake trees. So we have here, we're running out. I seem to have done too many for myself here somehow, or too many out of order. So the way I found this particular one with the tripping hazard, I was looking for duct tape first, and they had all kinds of duct tape that you can put over the wires that say caution, black and white, black and yellow stripe, to know that there's a caution thing that you got to watch out for. But they're pointing out in this picture that you can't really read because it's so small. We have electrical tape and we have duct tape. And there is such thing as duct tape that is electrical grade, but in general, duct tape is not electrical grade. You should be using electrician's tape to tape wires around the tree or around the lighting on the tree. If you have a frayed cord or something, you probably shouldn't use it. But if you're going to fix do it yourself, kind of fix a wire and re-insulate that or rewire that because you want to not throw it out this year. All the stores have run out and you have to fix the old one. Please use the right grade of tape, not the duct tape that conducts nicely.
Right. Now, I have seen enough injuries treated with electrical or duct tape that I would have to say this would be considered reasonably foreseeable misuse.
Yeah. Okay, you put it next to the fireplace. I think.
Well, I think this is another easy one. Yeah. So the use error that leads to the hazardous situation is don't put your crispy, crunchy, dried out Christmas tree right next to the live fire.
But that's the only place it can go. That's the only place.
It gives great Hallmark pictures. You can put tell everybody to smile in front of the Christmas tree, but don't put the flammable tree next to the live flame, please.
Yep. And then we have this one here is a clearly frayed wire. So once again, we will just start piling them up here off to the side. But we got another death caused by frayed wires. And this here, that looks like a smoke detector. Well, what does the fireman say about the smoke detector?
They are a wonderful first line of defense. They provide, you can get them now where they have audible and visual warning alarms. So they'll have strobe lights in them too.
Missing a battery.
And that is one of the reasons why most municipal codes require hardwire smoke and CO alarms with a battery backup. But if you are not going to maintain your protective measure, it's not an effective protective measure. So if your medical device has an alarm, but you don't maintain the device adequately charging it or replacing the battery, the alarm isn't going to function. So your protective measure won't be effective.
We're required to use those alarms for these things down in the D category. So I think this one is here. Am I right?
Yeah. If the smoke or the combination alarm doesn't go off, you're looking at D-level potential injuries. Now, for the FDA, how do they handle assumptions on the effectiveness of protective measures?
You have an electrical safety test that you have to pass for the volume, the tone, and sometimes they have different types of tones, so you have to use that specific tone. If there's a light that they indicate, you have to use that color light, that brightness of light, the number of decibels that an audible is supposed to be, and those are verified by the electrical safety lab. But just because the one that went to the electrical safety lab worked doesn't mean they all work. So that is something they're supposed to be testing when they build the devices as part of their final QC check. But I have seen companies that believe that they can sample alarms, and that would be a no. You don't sample the alarms, you do 100% on the alarms. If it's important enough to have an alarm, you need to test it. So that's our list.
Yeah, a general rule of thumb is that the FDA requires validation testing for everything associated with a critical task. Based on the ranking of our hazards here, if the use error is going to almost all of these, we're looking at a large series of critical tasks. I don't think this medical Christmas tree is going to be the type of device that gets to submit their regulatory submission without performing usability testing.
Well, I mean, if it's a 510K, all we have to do is show it's equivalently dangerous to everything else on the market. Whereas if we're doing a de novo, they're actually going to put the bar a little bit higher, and they're going to say this actually has to have benefits that outweigh the risks. And with that number of risks, you're probably out of luck this year.
Fantastic. And I got to say that I love that comment. Keep Santa away from the chimney until we do some design change.
Yep. Thank you very much. That was a pleasure. Thank you for everybody participating in our exercise. We may have more of these just because it's fun for us, but hopefully it's amusing for everybody else. And hopefully you learned a little bit that will avoid a Christmas tree accident this year. And if you can't avoid the accident, hopefully you can have the fire extinguisher and the smoke alarms working properly. Thank you, everybody, and have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday. And we'll see you on January 12th. No, actually, it's not the 12th. It's 12, 13, 14, 15th. January 15th is when I get back from vacation, and we're going to switch from Fridays to Thursday live streams. So 12:30 on the 15th of January. See you then.
Bye, everybody.